This next session at the Student Hub Live is all about self-care for your studies, and I'm joined by Meg John Barker. Thank you so much for coming along.
No problem.
You're both you're on the counselling and forensic team in psychology, and we always like applying some of the stuff that we teach to students. So we've just been giving them some ideas on maths bargains. And
I saw.
Yeah, it's
I
good,
was
isn't
taking
it?
notes, you know.
Yeah, very important to think about.
Yeah.
But now we're going to take some of these aspects around counselling
Yeah.
and psychology and think about how we can apply those to ourselves. Because so many students are really, really caring about other people, and then you ask what they're doing for themselves, and often, you know, they don't treat themselves like they treat others.
Yeah.
And you are also practicing and writing a lot about self-help. So I thought you'd be the best person to come and take us through all of this.
I'm very happy. And on the module that you're referring to, that in the new psychology module on counselling and forensic psychology, we've actually embedded self-care in like the textbook and the VLE materials to kind of help students think all the way through about how they might engage with it, self-caring. I mean, we partly did that because some of the topics, obviously, in forensic and counselling psychology can be quite tough, especially if you've got personal kind of or family kind of history of those things. But I think it's important for everybody in whatever module you're taking, even if it's not directly relevant. So yeah, I'm really keen to chat about it with you all.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So we've got some widgets that we'd like to have your feedback on, and these are, I care for myself, so that's a continuum, so let us know where you feel you're positioning yourself on that. There's also a question about whether or not you agree or disagree that you would be kinder to someone else. So if someone came to you and said, I've got this going on or whatever, would you give them the same advice if they were somebody else, or would you be kinder if they were another person? And we've also asked about some of the barriers, so some of the things that might prevent you from taking care of yourself. And we've listed but a couple there because there's a limit on some of these widgets. But in the chat, you might be able to fill us in on some of the other areas that maybe you find difficult in overcoming. So some of the barriers that are facing you for self-care. This must be an important thing with self-help. I mean, you can sort of tell people how to do it, but what are some of the barriers then, and how do you sort of promote this idea of self-care? It seems so good. You think, why isn't everyone doing it?
I know. I mean, there's huge barriers to it. I think there's sort of the practical barriers around time and money, particularly having enough resources, having enough energy for it, having enough time in the day for it, because it is like, it can feel like adding in an extra thing. And if you're, you know, I was thinking about the situation a lot of our students are in, you know, having to find the money for the course now, which is not something I had to do when I was studying myself. You know, with high course fees, you've also got a lot of people caring for relatives. You've got a lot of people working full-time and doing their studies. So it's like, it can really feel like a barrier of where do you put it. So that's definitely something I hope we can talk about a bit. But also, like, there is a massive barrier internally as well, because we're taught to see self-care as quite self-indulgent or selfish, and that idea that we should kind of put others first rather than ourselves. So I think there's often an internal barrier of thinking either I shouldn't be doing this, or even I don't deserve it, because most of us have quite a strong like inner critic as well that reckons that we should just be able to do all of the things without ever looking after ourselves in any way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. We asked people if they'd be kinder to someone else, and 91% agree that they would.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because usually, you know, if you think it's a good tactic actually to say what would I do if a friend was in the situation. But yeah, you know, you get up in the morning, something tough happens, and you're just like, nope, I've got to plug on through, I've got to do the next thing. And you know, if somebody else was going through that, you'd have said, oh, you know, take a few minutes, have a cup of coffee, look after yourself a bit. Yeah, we're mostly our own worst enemy on these things.
Is this a technique you could use in self-help to sort of prompt yourself to think about something that you might say to yourself if you weren't yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think thinking, what would you say to a friend? That's often a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good self-help tip. And also, I think it's a little bit about having a real think about what self-care would work for you, and actually kind of putting it into your day and your week and your month, so it becomes a habit. So it's not, you know, something that you have to really think about each time, if that makes sense.
There are all these barriers. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of them, and people have said, you know, 30% of our audience have said time is a main factor. But interestingly, and I would agree with this, 40% have said it's guilt.
Yeah.
Self-care, I think 30% have said that they put others first. And indeed, many people are caring for others, either in a caring role or just generally being, you know, someone in the household who's managing a lot of other demands and needs. But these two issues are so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one about caring for others, you know, a really useful thing to think is to start noticing when you are more self-caring, how are you with others? Because I would argue, and I think the evidence backs it up, is that the more self-caring you are, the more you've got to give, basically. So actually that kind of argument of, it's the metaphor is often used online of the oxygen mask. You know, you put your own on first before you put somebody else's. Yeah. If you're not looking after yourself at all, it's really hard to have the energy to look after other people. And you can end up kind of resentful about it, struggling with those kind of caring tasks. So it is important, you know, and then it's important to do the self-care in a caring way as well, if that makes sense, you know, because, you know, it can become another stick to beat yourself with. Like, I'm not doing enough self-care, I should be doing more, and now I have to feel bad about that as well. Like, that's not helpful.
No, I know. I know. Yeah. The other day I'd been trying to get things done at home so that I could have some time to spend with the family. Yeah. And by the end of it, I was ragged. I was so knackered. Yeah. And, you know, they came home and I was like, oh, and I thought, actually, what sort of greeting was that to people when I was just on my knees with exhaustion, and I thought actually I was no fun at all, probably.
Well, that's right. We tend to kind of forefront everything else and think, well, we'll maybe do the self-care if we've got everything else done, but, you know, then that's the day that never comes. So it's about giving it as high a priority as your studies and caring for other people and all of the other things you do with your life. Not, you know, necessarily more, but at least as higher priority.
But in all things to do with counselling and even psychology, we like to look at our definitions, and self-care is one that I think is worth just sort of, what do you mean by self-care? What are some of the things that could be included in that?
I think there's a lot of different ones, actually, so you can kind of chunk it up a bit. But it's anything that involves looking after yourself. But so one would be getting your basic needs met. So there's, again, a lot of kind of useful stuff online of like a checklist. If you start feeling really bad, it's like, have you eaten today? Have you drunk enough water? Have you had enough sleep? Have you looked at enough pictures of cute animals on the internet? You know, these are the basic needs.
Yeah. Right? Especially cute animals on the internet.
And then, you know, so that would be one kind of self-care. Have you done those things? Another kind of self-care would be around sort of, are you trying not to do the things that you know are really quite bad for you? You know, that would be one thing, just like learning the things that really don't help and trying to not go into those ones. Then, you know, just kindnesses, just doing things that are kind to yourself, that's like treating yourself as someone who's worthy of kindness, really. Yeah. So that would be our, you know, hot baths or listening to music you really love, or anything, you know, being with your pet, you know, whatever gives you just that real sense of warmth and self-kindness. And then a final one would be time for self-reflection. So you're not just like going through boom, 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 getting things off the to-do list, but you're actually like giving yourself just even little moments to pause and think, you know, what space am I in? Like, is it a good idea to go and read that textbook right now? Or is you know, am I feeling like my concentration isn't all that? Actually, this would be, you know, better to go and get some domestic chores done and do that later. That kind of checking in and reflecting, you know, or more long-term planning of like, okay, what have I got coming up in the next few months? Can I say yes to this extra thing? Or should I maybe not do? So, yeah.
People in the chat room are saying that they have difficulties, like when the to-do list is so long and they don't feel there's enough time to actually sit down and reflect on things.
Yeah, exactly. It gets like that. Mm-hmm.
This space actually may be a good time to think about and share even some of those quick fix tips and things that can work for you. So maybe we can pick up on some ideas that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
How do you get around this idea of time and actually starting to build things up? Do you have to spend a big time reflecting, or
no? I think building it in as little bits of time first is a really good one, and I think there's something a bit weird about it that I feel like once you start living your life a bit more in this way, you do often find it feels like you've got more time rather than less. You know, I can't guarantee that for anybody, but that's sort of my experience. Is weirdly enough building that. I suppose, you know, maybe when you're just pounding through everything, often you do waste a lot of time. You do things when you're really not in the right headspace for it, so it takes a lot longer, or you keep going onto Facebook and getting distracted because you're really not loving it. Yeah. So again, this sort of doing it in a more self-caring way, actually, I think will probably mean better quality of stuff that you're doing, you're enjoying it more, and you probably will feel a bit more spacious around it. Yeah. But I mean, what works for me, and it's not for everyone, is like certainly starting the day kindly. So I leave my phone upstairs so I can't go straight onto Facebook and go, what's Donald Trump done now? For example, would be one way. And like starting the day with a nice cup of coffee. Actually, I go sit by the river and have a cup of coffee, but whatever anyone else, then you're starting the day in that way. Before you've got sucked into everything.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't work for everybody's life, but it may be something, trying to put something in that early part of the day where it's nice. Or thinking about how you do the commute. If it's like you're in the car, you're on the train, could you do something self-caring in that period?
Routine times, aren't they, mornings, where we often get in a pattern. And if you can shift that, that might be good. People are talking about and sharing ideas around MOOCs and mindfulness.
Yes.
And I know you're a big advocate of mindfulness, but equally sometimes that can have connotations of, again, requiring a lot of time. But it doesn't always have to, does it?
No, it really doesn't. But I think there's a real danger with mindfulness, again, that it becomes another stick to beat yourself with. I'm not mindful enough and I'm not doing meditation properly. I've been doing it like 10 odd years and I still don't think I'm doing it properly. So it's quite, it's a challenging thing. But really all it's about is, giving yourself some time in the day where you're just being rather than doing. So again, me and my cup of coffee in the morning, I stop trying to do like a formal meditation. I just try and be with the cup of coffee, enjoying the sensations of it, not worrying too much about if thoughts pop up in my head, just trying not to follow them too much, but just stay with being with a cup of coffee. And sometimes it works better than others. It doesn't have to be this kind of, sitting on the proper kind of cushion and in the proper kind of posture and doing it all the right way and for hours at a time.
It's just being present, isn't it, I guess, and refocusing and centering on things. HJ and Sophie, I hear there are lots of tips and things being shared, and so I just wanted to sort of allow some space for some of that. What's happening?
It's a really nice conversation going on. Everyone's been absolutely lovely. Some really good ideas floating around. I really like Davin's idea to take time to recognise your achievements, no matter how small they may be. So if people could please send us some of their achievements from the last, couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years, we'll put them up on our board. So whatever you think you've achieved, let us know and we'll pop them up.
But I think earlier when we were talking about some of the barriers, some people are saying they just simply forget, and because we're all in different habits, and someone said barriers having to work to pay bills. It's hard, among other things, to try and take the time out. And I think for me, I either because of all this time put to other things, I either eat properly or sleep properly. I can't quite get doing both at the same time. But Jordan as well suggesting working out, and some of the MOOCs looks really good that people are suggesting. So Davin said there's a Taoism and Western culture MOOC that really helped him about thinking different things, and Amanda mentioned that mindfulness MOOC on FutureLearn as well. So really great resource.
I'll pop the link in the chat as well so that you can find it on there. But I know that for me it's very much I feel like I'm looking after myself if I'm looking after other people. That's my excuse, is looking after others. So it is worth just making sure that you take the time to look after yourself first.
So a lot of this then, Meg John, is talking about taught stuff, people going on MOOCs and thinking about things. Is there a sense that some of this can be taught and that there can be frameworks that can be helpful to people? Is that some of what self-help is based on? Yeah,
I guess that's part of my passion for writing this. If I didn't think it could be taught, I probably wouldn't be writing the stuff that I do. And I think, a mindfulness course can be, or a book on mindfulness or an audio can be really helpful if it's brand new ideas to you. Just, it's about finding people who speak to you as well. It's not about like, I must go and do that particular one, but actually like check out a few YouTube clips and find, that person, I really like the way they're talking about it. That works for me, then you can hear that. But I suppose, for me, a big part of it is that it's sort of, you've got self-care as this kind of individual strategy, maybe to help you be more happy in your life and maybe, actually study better, for example. But also there's the kind of cultural aspect of it, which is that we're all really taught by the wider culture to be incredibly self-critical. So, we live in a culture that sells most of the products by telling us, we're not beautiful enough or successful enough or happy enough, and therefore we need to buy this book or buy this product or live our life in a different way. So in a way, when we're doing self-care, we're actually resisting like that whole message and doing something a bit different. And I think that's a really important as well. So I think it's not just about trying to do like individual techniques in a way, trying to make ourselves a better person. That's almost like feeding the problem. It's about actually trying to think about these messages we get from wider culture about what we should be like, and trying to be more gentle with ourselves in a world that's not very gentle, especially at the moment.
Can we talk a bit about how students might experience that with study? Because it just strikes me when you're talking about these expectations and things that this is exactly the sort of thing that could happen when students are getting a tutor-marked assignment back.
Yeah.
They could think, this is all criticism, ignoring all the good bits. It's got a grade. It's ultimately some form of, albeit, constructive criticism.
Yeah. I think that's a hard one, isn't it? Because when we're all taught to criticise ourselves so much, it's very easy to be reading constructive criticism and only hearing it, taking it very personally as well, really feeling it that way. So I suppose again, part of this like ethos of self-care would be going easier on ourselves, not expecting ourselves to be perfect, but recognising we have skills in some areas and really not in others, and that being okay. Yeah. There's something like Brené Brown, who writes all this stuff about vulnerability, who's done this really popular TED Talk and books about vulnerability. She says it's all about being able to be vulnerable and not trying to be perfect, and that's sort of why you're doing this. And so again, I guess trying to be okay with the fact you don't have to be doing brilliantly at everything all of the time, and that you're valuable as a person without having to be producing stuff or getting certain grades or having certain successes in life. It's just like you are valuable.
So is some of this about the level of expectation and how we're meeting up to that? Often when I'm teaching, I'll say to students, they say, I'm really disappointed. And I'll say, well, what did you think you should get? Yeah. And they say, well, I hadn't really thought about that. I just think it should be higher. And actually, we'll sit down and say, well, how much time have you had? How hard did you work on it? There are all of these factors that will go into something, aside from just sheer brilliance, So if you don't have any time and if you've been sick and all of these things, that will account. But is some of this about, you were saying about these expectations of being beautiful enough and also being studious enough and producing a good enough thing? Yeah. Is part of this about setting your expectations and really reflecting on how much off the mark you are, I guess, with those in all reality?
Yeah, and thinking also about where some of those expectations come from. I mean, that's where we do get into the more mental health side of things, I suppose, but, getting therapy or other kinds of support to think a bit about some of those ideas you've got about what makes a successful person. Like, that's something we talk about a lot in therapy, where people have got kind of ideas about, most of us have this kind of ideal self of like who we think we ought to be, and then also a real sense of like, oh my God, somebody might find out I'm actually this really fundamentally flawed human being. And that, that's where we feel shame, is when it feels like that side's being exposed. Yeah. So, another part of self-care really is about sort of not striving all the time to be this ideal self, but realising that you are okay as you are. And that actually almost like befriending that side of you that's really vulnerable, that feels like somebody's going to figure out that you're not good at this, or that, you do have these internal battles or that kind of thing. Yeah. So in a way, through your studies, that could be your mission, to try and, in a way, then you get the bad grade or something doesn't go so well. There's one way of seeing it where that's how you can most learn from those, it's that cliche, if we learn most from our mistakes or whatever. Pema Chodron, who's an author I really like, has this thing about fail again, fail better. Failure's like the best thing we can be getting in terms of living better in the world,
I felt very relieved once when I failed something, because I'd never failed anything ever, and it was and I remember thinking it was the worst thing in the world. And after a while I realised it never had to happen again. That was the first. I could never fail for the first time again. I could only fail for the second or third or fourth time again. Right. But I thought, phew, thank goodness that's out the way, because these things do happen. People are talking about all these different things in the chat that are sort of useful to them, so music and various things. Now, surely if you're an author writing self-help books and working on all of these wonderful modules, you must be in a perfect position to be the epitome of a calm and relaxed person. But I imagine, as you're laughing, that isn't always the case. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that you found, sort of when you've been doing all this reflection, which we don't have time for in our busy lives. What are some of the things that you you've either done and maybe discarded, or things that are working for you? You've talked
Yeah.
about the phone upstairs thing and about setting yourself up for a
Yeah.
good start, but what are some of the other things people might try and use?
Well, I guess I would say first, actually, the part of the reason I write about this is entirely self-indulgent or self-caring, whichever we want to put it, but it's because I struggle with this stuff a lot myself, you know, and I think most people do. So it's good to normalise it and think like this is a struggle that most of us are facing, and even if people are putting a very shiny, happy face on social media, that's not what's really going on. People are really struggling. At the moment, people are really struggling, full stop, I think, a lot of us, you know, with everything that's going on. So things I found useful for me, I think about balance a lot. I think about, you know, the self-caring need for some solitude in life. So if you're just constantly around other people, it's probably not great. You know, you need some time alone to do some of this stuff. But at the same time, supportive other people is a really, you know, is obviously a really self-caring thing. The more around people who are supportive, again, the evidence is really strong that supportive relationships are one of the best things you can do for yourself. Yeah. It's about thinking, I try and think in a week a bit of like looking at the week ahead. Is it too hectic, too many other people? Or is it like I'm not actually seeing any friends? Yeah. And trying to make sure I have a bit of both. Yeah, balance in the week, you know, with a bit of both of those things. I get a bit of looking after the body in there, you know, thinking about when that's going to happen. And as I say, the more you can kind of plan it, then the less it's hard when you get to that day of, oh, no, I really should do something. Well, if it's already in the diary, you know, or you've really thought about well, I'm going to do this kind of physical activity with this person, so I'm definitely going to do it, because otherwise the day will be let down. You know, you kind of have to put stuff in place to make it happen rather than just hoping that it'll happen.
I did this thing recently where I started thinking about how I felt after things. So often I think, I really love seeing this particular friend, or I really love doing this. But I realised actually that I constantly felt bad afterwards, because I'd either felt very burdened or overloaded or hyped up or whatever. And I started just thinking, which I guess is a really quick way of reflecting, is how did that actually make me feel? So I think it's a good thing to do, going out with a group of 20 people, but actually I found it really, really draining.
Oh yeah, that's a big one for me. Those big kind of public gatherings I find really hard. So it's about, you start to tune in, and that's part of this whole mindfulness idea of just slowing down and noticing a little bit, just, you know, taking the pace down slightly and starting to notice, okay, whenever I do that, I find it really hard. So maybe I'm only going to do that if I have to do it at all on days when I've got, you know, super energy, and I'm not going to try and do that thing on a day when I'm already feeling a bit rough, you know. And it starts to help you think, well, who are my supportive other people, and who actually are maybe friends that it actually takes a bit more energy to be around than giving me any. And again, you need the balance there. You know, it's all right to be giving a lot to people, but you do need to get some support back, and it may not be from the same people, but...
Is there ever a sense that sometimes when people are feeling very vulnerable or low, they're not always in the best position to form connections and make decisions about what's right?
No, absolutely.
Because you sometimes forget actually going for a run makes me feel really good, because you're feeling really lethargic and don't want to do anything. Is it in any way useful? Have you got any techniques about things people might use to remind themselves, or to make... Do you ever have like a diary and just write things that make me happy or things that make me sad?
Having a list would be great to remind yourself. I mean, again, those checklists online are really good that are just kind of like you're starting to feel a bit low. Just check, have I eaten something today? You know, have I had enough sleep or too much sleep? You know, it's like just kind of checking through those basics. And then, having a list of the things that generally help. Great. And, you know, and kind of letting yourself off the hook if you are feeling really bad, then just trying to do something kind. And remembering that often things feel more overwhelming at that point, or decisions are harder at that point. Actually, when you're feeling a bit better, you know, put that decision off, procrastinate that decision to a time when you're feeling a bit better, is a good idea.
I guess you could get a list, and it would probably be surprising what was on that list, because some things like, you know, for me, having a nice bubble bath or playing my cello, you know, that can just take 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but actually it can matter a huge amount. So this whole idea of time and money doesn't necessarily have to relate, because sometimes those small things, just having to close the bathroom door for 5 minutes and not be accountable to anyone, can really give me quite a big headspace. But I forget it, because I'm normally just so busy with everything.
So again, it's a balance of, you know, the list of things when you're really feeling rough, that's really useful, but also trying to make sure there's something in every day. Like the most depressed folks I work with, I say daily kindness. Like if all you can do, I remember one example of somebody who is like, really struggled to be kind to themselves. And the first thing he managed was just when he was looking at the sandwiches at lunch, instead of picking the one he thought he ought to have, he would pick the one he really fancied. And it's like an upward spiral. You've spiraled all the way down to that point, but you start doing little things like that, and it just begins this kind of to turn around the direction of the spiral. So it's going back up, and then you're starting to notice, oh, maybe walking is something great for me, or maybe this particular person I'll spend a bit more time with, or maybe I'll watch my favourite series again, whatever it is for you.
Yeah, and just being able to vocalise some of those things and say, well, this is what I'd like, can be really, liberating.
Well, this is why I end up putting a lot of this stuff in the self-help books I do around sex and relationships, because actually it is a practice of tuning into yourself. And something we're really bad at in sex and romantic relationships is actually tuning in and saying, this is how I want to do relationships. This is the kind of sex I enjoy. It's really, really difficult to, first of all, to know those things about yourself, and then to say them to another person. So both of those books is they both start with self-care, which might seem kind of weird. You're expecting all these pictures of positions, and it's basically, this is how to do self-care.
Well, no, because it's important. It's all these ideas of these constructions of what we think we should be, isn't it? Sophie and HJ, I know there's a lot of chat going on.
Yes, there's just a few comments that I'd like to pick up on that were relating to what you're saying. One of the things that we have been talking about is choosing the right time to do certain things in order for them not to stress out. So some people are talking about working and studying in the mornings rather than the evenings because they find it's quieter, and having less distractions leads to less stress. But on one of your other points as well, Kate says she has a bullet journal where she writes down all the things she needs to do and remember to sort of help keep her well and self-care. And we also talked about trying different things out as well, because different things work for different people. And Davin had, he said, failures are the stepping stones to success, which I think is really sort of, it's quite nice, because I think sometimes we just have to try things out, and, if we feel that it doesn't work out, we know that there's always something else that we can try, which I think is a good point that you made.
Sophie, what about you?
Yeah, it's been really lovely. Loads of different nice ideas. We've also had Phoebe, who likes walking, and a couple of busy households. So we've got Libby, who homeschools her children, and she has quite a lot of people in the house quite a lot of the time. So she finds it very tricky to sort of get time to herself. I know that I used to have that quite a lot, and I used to go to the coffee shop and do things like that. So, because that would get me out for a couple of hours, I'd treat myself to a coffee, leave my phone at home, which was the hardest bit. And then at least you've done a good couple of hours of solid work. Even if, it's only 2 hours, it's probably better than 4 or 5 sat at home getting distracted every half an hour. So
actually, turning the email off and leaving your phone could be a really nice mental break. Just come to think of it.
Thinking about when you do engage with online and when you don't is definitely good.
Not being available all the time for everybody.
And I like that. I mean, I do exactly the same trick of getting out of the house and being somewhere else, and cafes can be really, a kind place to go. Or, if you haven't got the money, libraries and things like that as well. There's lots of nice places to go, and it can often feel a lot easier to work under those circumstances. But I also think in busy houses, maybe trying to make it a conversation that you're all having together, and thinking about some things you might be able to do together that's more self-caring, as well as kind of how do we respect each other's space, when are we going to give each other a bit of space to do this. Because another thing that we found, Jackie Gabb and I did that book about the enduring love study and long-term relationships, and that found that having a bit of separate time as well as together time was really valuable for people's relationships. So it ties
actually,
in there as well.
Now that we've stopped battling with this idea of having some family time at a certain time in the weekend and just think, let's all just do what we want to do for this bit, it can be quite nice, because then you can all go off and do your own bits. I want to just end by talking about the module that you're working on, because we're going to show a video afterwards that's part of that and part of, it's available openly. And this is quite an interesting thing. You mentioned it's to do with counselling and forensic psychology and psychology, which is a really interesting and new mix for the Open University, and something that I know a lot of students are interested in when they can't decide quite what area they want to go at an undergraduate level. Tell us about it.
So this is DD 310, which is our forensic and counselling psychology module, or we're calling it MAD or BAD. So it's
for short.
and it's all about that. It's all about how do we figure out who we criminalise and see as responsible for their behaviours and then maybe punish or try to rehabilitate? And how do we decide who we pathologise for their behaviours and see as having some kind of mental illness that needs treating? And how do we work differently with people who end up in the offender category and people who end up in the client category? And it's really spot on again for these times, because it's, you know, making the point that a lot of things seem to impact who goes down each route, particularly things like race and class and gender and sexuality, of like who gets put in more in the bad category or the mad category, and then of course gets treated really differently for it. And so, yeah, so I've been writing about the sex and sexuality part of that module, because that's sort of my area. So we do talk a lot about sort of sex crimes is one thing, but also we cover, again, who gets criminalised and who gets pathologised for their sexual interests, and also how we talk about sex in the therapy room. And there's also a whole week on sex work as well, which again is a real kind of current area. So we were happy to get to cover that.
Oh, I'm excited. When is this coming out?
So this is going to be out in October.
Wow.
We've got so many cool resources as well, like the animation you're going to see, but we've got a whole load of other like animations in there, and, you know, really good audio discussions and things. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great one for students.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Meg John, thank you so much for coming in, Fellingasson.
No
We're
problem.
going to show you that video, or one of the videos from that new module now. And if you're interested in that, look out for it. We'll put a little link in the resources section, and also Meg John's rewriting the rules as well. We'll chuck in there as well for you to have a look at if you're interested in finding out more about relationship.
I'm going to do a zine about self-care.
Oh,
That'll be on
good.
my website soon.
Oh,
So,
great.
yeah.
Excellent. Lots of scope. I hope you found this session useful. Thank you, Meg John. We certainly have given us loads of ideas here. We're going to show you that video, and then we're going to come back and talk to some people from the OU Students Association, which I'm really looking forward to. So we'll see you in 5 minutes.